He's the one who gave me that name, working there at the museum. He always was telling people, well, you should go talk to my wife up there. She's the Bigfoot lady. Go talk to her. So when I was trying to choose a name to go with, that's what I stuck with. So what I want to do today, I'm not too good used to, I have really bad stage fright, so I'm fighting through this for y'all. So what I want to do today is I want to share my personal encounters and experiences, seeing as this is the Encounters Conference. But as I'm doing so, once I tell my two encounters, I want to branch from there into a little bit of family history as well as some of the research that I have been doing recently. So hopefully we can get the technology to work, so let's see what we can do. Maybe? Going the wrong way. Alright, that can just hang out up there for a minute. So let me just share with you guys again, my personal experiences. I have two of them. One in which I refer to as the carving tree encounter, and the second that I refer to as the bearskin rug thing, and you'll find out here again in a second. So again, full disclosure, my main encounter that I refer to as the carving tree encounter, I didn't actually see Bigfoot that day. I just heard them very, very loudly. My brother and my cousin who were with me at the time, they actually were the ones who saw Sasquatch, Bigfoot, usually interchangeably. So let me dig into it a little bit. I had some slides here. What number is that? If somebody could pull up slide 10, that would be awesome. If you can't, it's okay. What it was is just a zoomed in satellite view of the area of North Georgia where I grew up. So I'm from Gilmer County, born and raised. My family has been there for about 200 years. They're some of the first white settlers for the area. So my brother, my cousin, and my father and my uncle, we were all on that property that day chopping firewood. I would have been 15 years old at the time. My brother would have been 12. So my dad and my uncle gave us kids a break. They said, hey, y'all been working pretty good. Y'all go off and take off. So my uncle, he had recently remarried. So the cousin I am mentioning, she had just become a part of the family. So again, we've been on that property for so long, the family, many generations ago, had picked this one particular tree on the very edge of the property and started carving their names on it. And we called it the carving tree for obvious reasons. And so we were going to take our cousin over there and go let her put her name on the tree because, hey, she's part of the family now. So painting the picture for you, because that's just kind of how I work in my head, is I have a visual memory. The hayfield was really, really long, and I had some pictures of it I was going to show. But it's probably from where I'm standing here to all the way to the back end of the parking lot, way out there, was how far away we were from our parents. And we get in there, we're doing what teenagers do, messing around, playing in the creek, went out there to the carving tree, started carving our names on the tree. And so we're probably maybe from here to that wall back there into the tree line where this tree was. And again, like I said, doing what kids do. All of a sudden my brother was like, Amanda, we should probably get out of here. I'm like, no, we've done come all this way, let's hang out some more. And so a description of the carving tree, if you're able to, Drew, go to slide 12. And turn the sound off. I had a video on there I was going to show. So I had my back to the woods where I was at. I was up on this giant rock that was grown up by this carving tree. Thank you, yeah. So these are just some website or Google pictures that I have, because unfortunately there's none exist. So I would have been up on top of a rock similar to this. And my brother and my cousin were down on the bottom. So again, like I said, my back was, then Michael's like, hey, we've got to go. We got to get out of here. Again, I don't want to leave. And he's like, no, we're leaving right now. And he takes off running. Again, we grew up in the woods, so I'm like, if he's running, I'm running too. I ain't hanging around. So we all took off running. Next slide, please. I have a picture of my brother, not him actually, but it's another one. So next one. We took off running. Next one. Again, Google. As they were ahead of me, I was trying to catch up with them because I had to jump down, climb off the rock, and get down. By the time they got to the tree line, I was about 10 feet behind them still. The most god-awful roar, scream, howl. Again, I have no idea how really to describe it, but it was the loudest thing I've ever heard in my entire life. It was so loud that it dropped me to my knees like this. And I have this visual image in my head of me down on my knees, looking up like this, seeing my brother and my cousin running. They were in the hay, and as I'm looking and this roar is going off, all the birds are flying up and out of the way and running. I catch myself, get back up and going. You flip a couple forward, please. That's my Nana. We'll talk about her in a second. You can leave it there. I want to dedicate this presentation to my Nana. So yeah, I catch up with my brother, and he's like, I was like, what the heck is that? What the freak is going on? He's like, I think it was Bigfoot. I'm like, you're freaking kidding me, right? Like, what the heck? So we catch up with my dad and my uncle. We get up there, all of us kids are flustered, hot and sweating. They're like, what's going on with y'all? And my brothers told him what just happened. My dad and my uncle, they just kind of look at each other and grin. They look back at us and say, yeah, you kids done run into the booger, didn't you? Like it was no big thing. Like we didn't just have like one of the most life-altering experiences of our lives. So fast back. So this is my grandmother, my dear sweet Nana, and that's her as a little girl growing up on this same property. That's actually a picture of her on that property when they lived there. So that would probably be the 1940s. So I grew up my entire life hearing stories from her about boogers. I had no idea that they were referring to Bigfoot. Here, for my family anyways, we always use the terms booger and haint kind of interchangeably. So for those who don't know, in the Appalachians, booger is the term for Bigfoot. It's kind of a play on the word boogeyman, and then haint is kind of what you use for like ghosts and stuff like that. So we went and we told our grandma about it, my Nana. She said the exact same thing that Dad did. It's like, oh, you kids done ran into the booger, didn't you? It's like, yeah, is that what you mean when you're talking about boogers? Because I always thought she was talking about ghosts. I had no idea she was talking about Bigfoot. She's like, yeah, your Uncle Kern run up into one whenever he was young, and that's one of the reasons he would never go back up there. So actually, I do was able to find a picture. The gentleman on the left, or my left, that was my great Uncle Kerm, and then some other ancestors of mine who grew up on that property. So to the next one, please. Back. Or you can just leave it there, that's fine. So what my brother described what he saw is a 7 to 8 foot tall man-like creature standing probably 50 yards up the hill behind me. And he knew it was about 7 to 8 foot tall because my dad is a very tall man. He's probably about 6'3". And he said it was way, way taller than him. He said it was standing there in perfect posture. It had no neck, like its neck was just stuck down into its shoulders. The hair color on it, though, was kind of a reddish brown, not like a really dark color. So it was more like an orangutan kind of color. And then the hair on the face and stuff started about right here and then worked its way on back. So this is actually a screenshot where we went on to the Gulf Coast Bigfoot Research Organization and made our report. And remember, this is the very early days of the internet, so thus the fun blue letters there. And I wanted to put this up there because this is coming from my brother. And remember, he was 12 years old at this time. So I'm going to read it in his words so you can hear an encounter from the mind of a 12-year-old boy. It says, me and my sister and cousin were at our second cousin, uncle's, Eric's property. We were headed to the carbon tree, which is a tree in the woods that the entire family has their names carved in it. Me and my sister Amanda was taking our new cousin Kelsey to the tree to put her name on it. When we got there, we started carving our names into the tree. After a while, I started having this strange feeling that something was watching us. Since we have bears in the area, I thought we had better leave. I started to walk away, then I turned around to tell Amanda and Kelsey to come on. As I did, I looked up the hill and I saw what appeared to be a giant fur-covered man. It was only about 50 feet away. It was watching us. I turned to Amanda and Kelsey and said that we better leave now. I got out my pocket knife just for protection. When we got out of the woods and reached the field, I closed my knife and started to run as fast as I could to that field. My sister and Kelsey did the same. We ran back to our parents. And he describes a little bit what I just said. It was about 8 foot tall, light colored, but that's my brother's full description here. So if you can go to slide 23. Keep that there. Good. Thank you. So fast forward. This is me in 2019. I've had many, many different jobs throughout the years, but one of my greatest, obviously, is I work for these folks. I work at Expedition Bigfoot, the Sasquatch Museum in Cherry Log, Georgia. It is owned by David McCara and his wife, Melinda. But the reason I am putting that picture up there is because I never really shared my encounters with a lot of people. And because, used to be really shy, and I was bullied a lot, unfortunately, in my teenage years. So I was already the crazy nerdy girl. I didn't want to be the crazy girl who saw Bigfoot walking around high school. But when I started working at Expedition Bigfoot, I started resharing my encounter because people were coming up all the time to me. It's like, well, what have you seen? You've seen Bigfoot? And I'm like, well, I haven't seen it, but I've heard it. And I kept retelling it. And so I thought one day, I was like, you know what? I need to get with my brother and just double check and make sure that what I am telling is the truth, that I'm remembering all the details and make sure that I'm not, oversaying something or anything like that. So if you'll go to the next slide, please. So this is a picture I was going to have up a minute ago. This is a movie poster for a Small Town Monsters production called The Beasts of Whitehall. And I put that up there because when I showed my brother that, he said, that's it. That's what I saw. So when I got a hold of my brother, and I asked him about the incident, we talked about it. He said, yeah, no, you're remembering everything pretty good. He said, but there's something you missed. You missed about. I was like, what are you talking about? Go to the next slide, please. It says, it had glowing red eyes. And there it goes. And I don't remember that. Because again, I didn't see it. He did, and he never really told us about it. He's like, it was already crazy enough that we saw Bigfoot. It's not going to be crazy enough that I saw this thing with glowing red eyes. And now working at Expedition Bigfoot, I hear that all the time. And so now to hear my brother say that, I'm like, are you freaking kidding me now? 20 years later, you're going to tell me about this? And what's so bizarre about it that we also hear with so many other Bigfoot witnesses is that the glowing red eyes thing, it was actually emitting its own light. And this was broad daylight, y'all. You have to remember that. It wasn't nighttime where it could be like eye shine or anything like that. This was broad daylight. So again, that's why I wanted to use this particular image because my brother said, that's it. So, next slide, please. Going back to this image, and the reason why, when I was telling him about it, I said, well, we've got all the details out about this creature, what it looked like and everything like that. He says, but man, the one thing I remember is how loud that thing was. He's like, what are you talking about, sis? I was like, the roar. I told him, that's all I remember is how loud and how it, like I said, knocked me down to my knees. And he's like, I never heard anything. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding me, right? There's no way you could have not heard that. And he said, yeah, I never heard a thing. So what I think happened, if we can go to the next slide, please. I think that I was possibly zapped. That's a term that is used in the Bigfoot world for when you are hit with a dose of infrasound. If we can go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So these aren't my drawings. These are some, again, found on the internet that are of Sasquatch roaring. And I can only imagine that this is what that thing looked like. Again, I didn't see it, my brother did. And infrasound, also known as infrasonics, which one gentleman later on today is going to be talking about the sounds that these creatures make. So I'm actually really excited to hear that, because infrasound can be used by, I think somebody mentioned yesterday, by tigers, elephants, whales, volcanoes, earthquakes. Those are all types, the vibrations they make, those are all types of infrasound. So if tigers can do their roar to stun some of their prey, I think Bigfoot probably can do the same. They have the body mass for it, they have the lung capacity, the vocal cords to be able to do that. That's the only thing I can think of that happened. Like I said, trying to put it into a box, trying to figure out what I was doing. So if we can go forward one more, thank you. Back, close enough. So yeah, this is the general area of there. And you can see just how wooded it is. The further over you go that way, the much more wooded it is. So my one slide I wanted to show was, again, a screenshot of it. Because people ask me all the time, man, why haven't you been back there? Because unfortunately that land has been sold. So I would love to go back to that area. I would love to go see the carving tree, look for any further evidence of any activity in that area. But unfortunately that land has been sold. So now we're going to skip forward, and I'm going to share with you my bearskin rug creature encounter. So that's good. So this is a screenshot of where the carving tree was, and this would be where my parents' house is. So it's probably only about 3 miles of a distance. I never told this story to anybody except for my best friend and my siblings for many, many years, because it was so freaking bizarre that I never attributed it to Bigfoot at all. And it wasn't until after working at Expedition Bigfoot for a long time and listening to other people's accounts and learning more about the woo aspects, if you want to call it that, in the Bigfoot world, that I really kind of looked at this and that was probably Bigfoot. And seeing as how close that area was from where I had this experience, definitely makes sense. Next slide, please. So AI mentioned here, this is a see-through Bigfoot is what this was supposed to be. So next slide, please. So painting a picture for you again, because that's just how my brain works. This is actually some of Sibylla's artwork, but it was a fall day there at my parents' house. All of us kids are playing on the road, riding our bicycles, and the leaves had freshly fallen, so that's why I had this image in my head of these fresh leaves, you know, brown, crisp, crunchy. That's just my visual in my head. We're playing, doing what kids do, and all of a sudden I hear a whole bunch of rustling coming behind me. And like many other witnesses you'll hear, this all happened within a split second. But it's like, you know, everything slowed down. So I'm hearing rustling coming up from behind me. I quickly turn and look, and there's something laying there. Next slide, please. I don't like looking at that. That is my weak redrawing of what I saw. So what was so bizarre is that this thing was laying down. When I turned, I caught it in mid, like that. And I refer to it as the bearskin rug creature because that's what it was doing. It was laying on the ground, head up, mouth wide open, like a bearskin rug. It was the only thing I could do to describe it. And all this happened in a split second. I'm looking at this thing going, am I actually seeing what my mind is trying to, is my mind playing tricks on me? Is it just a play in the leaves, you know, everything like that? And I'm like, no, that's real. It's looking back at me. And its face, it didn't look like a bear. That's why the first thing I was, okay, it's not a bear. It's also not a person. That's not a human. That's not a human looking at me. It was like a mix between both. It had a very, very slight muzzle, mouth was wide open and agape, and that was what was so strange, is it laid there with its mouth open, just looking at me. And the eyes were dark, like a shark. You always hear on the Jaws, I always think of that line they say, it was like a doll's eyes, so black and dark. So that's what I think of when I see it. So we can go forward one more. There we go. These are some images that I found on the internet that kind of reminded me of how the eyes were, how they were very deep set in there. The brow ridge was very, very strong, very prominent, very Neanderthal kind. But they were so dark. Like they didn't have the whites of the eyes or anything. It was just black and dark. No, thank you. So I'm looking at this thing, and again, this is just a split second. I'm like, what the crap? My brothers and the kids all holler at me, Amanda! I turn to look at them, I look back, that sucker is gone. That fast. And again, this was so bizarre, I never really talked about it because, as I'm going to talk about, I've had so many bizarre things happen in my life, I just kind of attributed it to that. So we can go to the next slide. This is another piece of Sibylla's artwork that I borrowed from her. This is actually of another witness encounter, their art. And although I don't really remember seeing bright white teeth, that was how far the mouth was open. It was unnaturally wide. So that's why I wanted to put that up there as kind of an example. Again, didn't think Bigfoot at the time because I didn't really know that much about the woo oogie boogie stuff about it. So that's just a glimpse into my experiences. If we can fast forward a couple of slides, just a quick thing. Again, like I said, so that's just a glimpse of my experiences. I've seen ghosts in my life, I've seen angels, I've seen shadow figures and demons, I've seen a dire wolf one time, that was crazy, and even a thing that looked similar to a pterodactyl. I'm not saying that's what it was, that's just what it looked like, okay? So, and I asked myself, why? Why me? Why is all this bizarre stuff happening to me? I'm a teenage girl growing up in the woods. Yeah, you see bears and you see other critters, but why am I seeing all this other crazy stuff? I think it has to do with these folks. Again, these are pictures of my ancestors. I grew up in Appalachia, which is very, very well known for its deep roots in a lot of the oogie boogie stuff out there. And although these folks here are very, very much Christian, as am I, they also believed that people were given gifts from God, gifts of sight, gifts of discernment, gifts of healing, and other things. I lose my train of thought. So, as I was a kid, I would go to my grandparents here and ask them, Nana, why is there boogers in my room? Not talking about Bigfoot. Why am I seeing these creepy things in my dreams? Why are these things coming to me? Why is it scary? And they would just say, oh, honey, it's because of the Jesus in you. She would always tell me that song, this little light of mine, it's because your light of Jesus would shine in you so bright that it would attract the negative and the bad in the world. And you hear a lot about the innocence of children. Next slide. And I wanted to read a verse to you. Again, I'm not trying to get preachy, but this is just where I hold all this stuff. It's Philippians 2:14 and 15. It says, do everything without grumbling and arguing, so that you may become blameless and pure as a child, without fault in a warped and crooked world, that you will shine among them like stars in the sky. And again, looking back on that, that's what I feel was happening to me. It's the only thing that I can attribute it to. If you can go to the next slide, we can leave that there. So I had this slide of a little girl praying, and that's what my mom would do, is she would give me my Bible, and she would tell me to put it under my head, in my pillow. And then that, with the protection of God, would keep the boogers away. So 90% of the time, it was on Psalms 91. And I'm not going to read the entire thing because I don't have time. But you can see here, it talks about God is your shelter, God is your refuge. You will not fear the terror of the night, or the punishment, or all these stuff. So it worked. To this day, even as an adult, I'm almost 40 years old, I will still put my Bible under my pillow at night if nightmares are bad. It works. Y'all may think I'm crazy, but we're here talking about Bigfoot, and that's already crazy enough, so you know what, take it for what it is. So, now you might be asking yourself, well, these are just a bunch of old stories. All these, the people in your life, you're just a religious, fanatic. You're just crazy. You're just making all this stuff up. There's no proof that Bigfoot is out there. Well, honey, you'd be very, very wrong. If we can fast forward a couple of clips, keep going. There we go. Like I said, you'd be very, very wrong. So I'm going to give you a little bit of insight into some of the research that I've been doing a lot here recently, and that is digging into older, ancient counts of Bigfoot, or Sasquatch. Back in the days, that wasn't really what they called them. They had different names for them. Wild man, haints, boogers, all these other different names. They didn't have Sasquatch or Bigfoot. That wasn't a term until the 1950s. Bigfoot wasn't, and Sasquatch wasn't termed until the 1920s by somebody who misinterpreted a Native American name. So you see here different ones. If we'll go to the next slide, it goes even further back. These are particular carvings here in different cathedrals. One more. Native Americans. Obviously, they know what's going on. They've been here in the United States for way, way longer than we have. So they had in petroglyphs. This is one called the Hairy Man that's in California. So if we'll go forward again. So many cultures across different time periods and locations have talked about the same creature that I experienced, that I saw, that my brother saw, that my Uncle Kerm saw, that other family members, and all these people that I've talked to have seen all over the United States. I mean, surely there's got to be something to it. So let's take a little bit of a deeper dive into some of this. So we'll go to the next slide. This is a really fascinating newspaper article. As you can see, it's talking about the Tennessee wild man. Again, wild man is one of the many names they gave this thing long before Bigfoot became the common term. And as you can look at the date, that's 1871. That's a little bit of a while back, ain't it? And if you read it a little bit, it's talking about, what did I do with this thing? There it is. I came prepared, y'all. He says here, they've been observing this frightful being for several weeks. He is said to be 7 feet tall and possess a great muscular power. His eyes are unusually large and fiery red. His hair hangs in a tangled and matted mass of jet below his waist, and his beard reaches below his middle. His entire body is covered with hair, and his whole aspect is most frightful. He shuns the sight of men and approaches with wild and horrid screams of delight every woman who is unaccompanied by a man. He sometimes, with great caution, approaches houses, and should he see a man, he runs away with astonishing swiftness, leaping the tallest fences with the ease of a deer, defying alike the pursuit of men and dogs. He has frightened several women by attempting to carry them off, as well as by his horrid aspect. The whole country around is now in a constitution, or concentration, I can't read that word. So, I don't know about you guys, that sounds an awful lot like modern accounts that people give. The muscular size, the height, the hair, the eyes. If I just changed this date to 1971 or even 2007, 17, again, that would sound just like a modern telling. If you can go to the next slide, please. This one's even a little bit more closer to home. This is from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution in Atlanta, Georgia, here in 1889. This describes another wild man sighting, but this is in Walker County, which is up near Lookout Mountain, near the Chattanooga area. Me working there at Expedition Bigfoot, I have taken so many reports up near that area. It's unreal. It's just as wooded and as dense as it is anywhere else. So if we can go again to the next one. And that's super blurry, sorry about that. But this talks again about wild man near Chattanooga. If you look at the date, it keeps getting older, 1886. This was 3 years prior to the other one. And on to the next. This one is my personal favorite. This is where my research has dug me into right now and what I'm digging the most into. I apologize, the scan is a little bit hard to see, but right here, that says Fannin County, Georgia. That is where Expedition Bigfoot now sits. That is where I grew up. Even though I grew up in Gilmer County, Fannin County is literally next door. This talks about a very, very terrifying encounter with a Bigfoot that actually, unfortunately, killed a man. And they put his name in this article, and I'm still trying to dig right now into finding his death certificate. I was hoping that I would be able to find it prior to this. It didn't happen. That's the nature of the beast when it comes to this research. You know, it's not, you're not going to find answers right overnight. It takes a lot of digging sometimes. So, on to the next one. This one goes even older. 1793. That is 262 years ago. That is a long time for y'all. That is almost older than our nation is. Even though the language of this article would probably be considered racial slurs in today's world, the meaning and the descriptions are not lost on modern ears. So I'm going to read it exactly as it says, so just bear with me. It says, this animal is between 12 and 15 feet high, and the shape resembling a human being, except the head, which is in equal proportion to its body, and draws in somewhat like a terrapin, which I looked that up, and that means drawn up like this. Its feet are like those of a black person, about 2 foot long, hairy, which is of dark dun color, meaning that it was very flat-footed. It was long, 2 feet long and hairy, which is of dark dun color. The eyes are exceedingly large and open and shut down its face. So open and shut really, really wide. Lost my spot. Exceedingly large open and shut down. The hair on the head is about 6 inches long, and the sight of it is scaring the black folks in the area. Its nose is like that of a human species, only large and indicated to what might even be called a Roman nose. So you do hear that in a lot of Bigfoot reports of them having more smushed in kind of noses like an ape would. But you'd be wrong. There's actually just as many reports of them having regular noses like we do, where they have a very prominent nose, which I think is what they are describing there. It ends with, it says that these animals are bold and have lately attempted to kill several persons, in which attempts, some of them have been short. Unfortunately, that is spelled in 1793 English, so it takes me a second to try to read that. So we'll go on to the next slide, please. So now let's dig into something even a little bit further back. We're going to go back to this particular petroglyph. This is referred to as Painted Rock. It's in Tulare County, I think I'm saying that right or wrong, California. And it is from the Yukuts tribe out there. And they believe that this particular petroglyph is 500 to 1,000 years old. And as you can see, I don't know about you, that doesn't look like a human to me, does it? There's a reason why they refer to this as the hairy man. Because if you see here the size of the people, size of a tree, you got a little one here, cute little hair, what's both they believe to probably be there's a female, but then you got this big old guy. And as many people have described, the males are very much larger in size. You know, you've got the big boar, like you have a big boar hog, or you have a big boar bear, you have big boar Sasquatch. Same thing. So again, I find this absolutely fascinating because this was over 1,000 years ago. And this is one of the, they didn't have pictures back then, they didn't have cameras, so how else are they going to show it off? So if we can skip to the next one, please. Here's another description. Unfortunately, I couldn't find where exactly this one was, but it pulled up in my Google search, and I find it pretty fascinating. I don't know about you, but those are some pretty darn big feet. And we'll go to the next, please. And yet another. So this one is fascinating because you have bear tracks, raccoon tracks, human footprints, and then whatever these are. if you count those toes, I don't know about you, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We can go to the next slide, please. Maybe next, well, not that far. Anyway, it was I had a picture of a cast there beside it of one with 6 toes with it. And when I saw that picture, it immediately reminded me of the one with 6 toes. So yeah, we can leave it here now. So these are some really fascinating depictions of the European wild man. People don't realize that Sasquatch isn't just an American phenomenon, it's also a worldwide phenomenon. So the picture here on the far left depicts carvings of wild man. This was sculpted on the side of this cathedral in Spain in 1486. I don't know about you, but giant feet, lots and lots and lots and lots of hair. And they're naked, they don't have clothes on. And you think if they're depicting saints and other things on the side of their cathedrals, for their clothes, why would they put a hairy naked man on the side of there? Unless it's what they saw. The second one over is a carving on the side of a pew in one of the churches in North France. And let's see, I wrote it down here. It is from the 16th century. And then the one on the far end, unfortunately, I could not remember where my notes went, and I forgot where that's it. But again, these are all in Europe. These are much older than even some of the Native American encounters, because those were from 500 years ago. These are from 600 and 700 years ago. I mean, there's got to be something going on here. And one more over. And this is my favorite rabbit hole that I have just discovered. Going into some of these historical accounts, this is painted by a very, very famous painter. You might have heard of him, Michelangelo.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So this is his painting of the Last Judgment. It is a fresco inside of the Sistine Chapel. Again, might have heard of it. This was painted between 1536 and 1541. So let's zoom in a little bit. What's that? I don't know, zoom in a little bit more.
Wow.
It's on there.
I don't know about you, but I know what that looks like. And it's really, really fascinating because these things are at the very, very bottom of that painting in a cave. And where they are at in this cave makes you go, wait a minute, they're under everything else. So again, not to be a little bit preachy, but let me read another verse to you. This is Philippians 2, 9, and 11. It says, "Wherefore God also hath highly exalted him, and given him a name above which is every name, that is the name of Jesus. Every knee shall bow, and every tongue shall confess of things in heaven, and things in the earth, and things under the earth." So if that was what Michelangelo and them were reading at the time when this would have been painted, I find that is my personal theory of why he would have depicted them under everything else. Again, it could be Bigfoot, could it not? I have no idea. Nobody knows. But it's definitely a fascinating rabbit hole that I've discovered. So had to share that with all of y'all. So, going to the next one. What does everything mean? What is all this that I've shared with you today? What does all of this have to do with anything? Well, that's the $5 million question, as they would say. But I know what it means for me on a personal level. We go to the next slide. If it hadn't been for my family to confide into, and for my friends at Expedition Bigfoot to confide into, my husband, my best friend, and everybody else to confide into, to share my experiences with, I would still be the crazy girl, be the crazy nut job, thinking that I was the crazy one. Turns out I'm not crazy. I'm just experiencing something supernatural in my life. And then it turns to find out, the more that I have shared, the more people that I have met who have also experienced supernatural and unnatural things in their life. So these are just some fun pictures of some of the fun researchers that I have met over the years at working there at Expedition Bigfoot. And because, again, me sharing my experiences got me my job there, which then in turn got me to meet all these crazy people, which in turn made me find more research to dig into, more stuff to learn, more stuff to think about. It's just been fun. So one more slide over. And again, it's also let me find some really, really fun friends I've made by working here and doing what I do now, which is sharing this. Again, I'm not used to speaking in front of a whole lot of people. I have wicked, terrible stage fright. I was bullied terribly as a child and as a teen. So standing up in front of people and working past my social anxiety is a really big step for me. So thank y'all for dealing with that. So in conclusion, what does all of this have to do? What, again, is in conclusion here? Here's what I want to leave everybody with. The last thought that I have is that to uncover the truth, we need more witnesses to come forward without fear of ridicule. We need to let researchers put aside their egos and biases and listen to all accounts, not just ones that fit into their particular paradigm, their own thoughts and ideas. Next slide. It's going to take couch researchers. Although there seems to be a stigma against that, I proudly wear that hat of being a couch researcher. I don't go out in the woods on purpose to look for Bigfoot because with all the supernatural experiences that I've had in my life, I don't want to bring something home with me. A lot of that stuff has eased up over the years, so I want to keep it that way. But you need somebody to dig through the data. And so I'm hoping that I can help with that. So if we can all come together and unite, we can all put together the pieces of this puzzle and start trying to figure out what it is that we all seek. Next slide. The question of the puzzle that is, what is Bigfoot? Next slide. That's for you to decide. I had 45 minutes in my brain, and so I'll take any questions if anybody has any. Yes, no, maybe so? Cool. All right, well then, thanks again everybody for coming. This has been a lot of fun and an awesome experience. I hope that what I shared can be of some use to anybody out here who has questions about these beings, because you're never gonna, anytime you find an answer, you find more questions. And so I'm always an open book if anybody, if you go to the last slide or not. So it was a slide of my social. You can catch me there, you can message me. I am an open book, even if I may not respond to you right away. Maybe because I'm at work running the museum, but I will try to answer as best as I can. You can reach me at Amanda the Bigfoot Lady on any of my social media platforms, as well as my email, which is amandathebigfootlady@gmail.com. So, thank you.
Is that it, Amanda?
There I am. Hang on. I have to share with you one of my absolute favorite quotes, which is I added it into my logo here. It says, "The world is stranger than we think, but it should not be strange to think." And that is by Dr. Michael Heiser.
I love it.